The surgical staples pulled every time I bent over, a reminder that my body wasn't what it used to be. I stood in the kitchen of my small ranch house on Elmwood Avenue, making myself weak tea because coffee still upset my stomach, when my phone buzzed. It was Sandra, my neighbour from 3 doors down. "Patty, I just saw Melissa's car pull up. She doesn't look happy." I set the kettle down carefully. Through the window above the sink, I could see Melissa's white Honda Accord idling in my driveway, exhaust puffing in the cold March air. Travis sat in the passenger seat, his face illuminated by his phone screen. My daughter didn't get out immediately. She sat there gripping the steering wheel, and even from this distance I could see her jaw working the way it did when she was furious. The doorbell rang, then rang again, longer this time. I shuffled to the door, one hand pressed against my abdomen where the incisions were still healing. When I opened it, Melissa pushed past me without waiting for an invitation. She was 41 now, but in that moment she looked exactly like she had at 16, chin jutted forward, eyes blazing, ready for war. "A sold sign," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut. "On Grandma's house. Are you out of your mind?" Travis followed her in, closing the door quietly behind him. He had that studied neutrality on his face, the look of someone who'd learnt to stand just outside the blast radius. He'd been dating my daughter for 2 years, and I still couldn't tell you what he did for a living beyond consulting. "Hello, Melissa," I said, moving slowly back toward the kitchen. "I'm doing better, thank you for asking. The surgery went well." She followed me, her heels clicking on the linoleum. "Don't do that. Don't make this about the surgery." Betty Morrison sent me a photo. "Grandma's house. My inheritance has a sold sign in the yard." I poured my tea, watching the steam rise. My hands were steady. That surprised me. It was my inheritance, actually. "Your grandmother left it to me." "For the family," Melissa shot back. "She meant for it to stay in the family. You know, she wanted me to have it. We talked about it 100 times, that was true." My mother, Carol, had adored Melissa with the kind of blind devotion that grandmothers sometimes have. She'd spent the last 5 years of her life in that beautiful craftsman house in Oakwood, the good part of town, and Melissa had visited her every Sunday without fail. I'd been proud of that devotion, that consistency. It was only after Mum died last year that I started to understand what those visits had really been about. "Your grandmother left the house to me," I repeated, sitting down carefully at the kitchen table. "In her will, with a specific note that it was for my security and care. Because she knew you'd give it to me." Melissa's voice cracked. "Because she trusted you to do the right thing." Travis cleared his throat. "Maybe we should all sit down and talk about this calmly." "Stay out of this," Melissa snapped without looking at him. Then to me, how could you sell it without even telling me, without even discussing it with me?" I took a sip of tea. It was too hot, burned my tongue a little, but I needed something to do with my hands. "I called you from the hospital," I said quietly, "before the surgery. I was scared, Melissa. They said there was a chance of complications because of my age, because of my blood pressure. I asked if you could come." "We've been over this," she threw her hands up. "The cruise was non-refundable. Bequam, we'd already paid for it. You said yourself the doctor told you it was routine. I said I was scared. Your mother was scared and alone, and I asked you to come." Something flickered across her face, guilt maybe, or just irritation at being reminded. "You were fine. You're standing here, aren't you? You're fine." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She was wearing expensive jeans, a cashmere sweater I knew cost more than my electric bill. Her highlights were fresh, her manicure perfect. She worked as a pharmaceutical sales rep, made good money, but never enough for how she lived. "I was alone," I said. "I woke up from anesthesia alone. I spent 4 days in the hospital alone. Sandra brought me home and helped me into bed. Sandra, who's practically a stranger, who just happens to be kind, not my daughter." Oh, here we go. Melissa's laugh was bitter. "The guilt trip, the martyrdom. You've always been good at this, Mum. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty," I said, and I meant it. I'd prayed about this every night since I'd made the decision, asking God to keep my heart right, to help me act from love and not from hurt. I'm trying to explain why I sold the house to punish me. She said it with certainty. To get back at me for the cruise. No, I set my teacup down to take care of myself because I realised lying in that hospital bed that I can't count on you to do it. The words hung in the air like smoke. Travis shifted uncomfortably. Melissa's face went white, then red. That's not fair, she whispered. Maybe not, I agreed. But it's true. She pulled out a chair and sat down hard. For a moment she just stared at the table, at the old placemat with faded sunflowers that had been there for probably 15 years. When she looked up, her eyes were wet. That house was supposed to be mine, she said, and now her voice was small, almost childlike. Grandma promised, she said, it would be mine someday. I already had plans. Travis and I were going to fix it up, maybe rent it out for income, or sell it. I finished. You were going to sell it. That's what you told your grandmother, wasn't it? That you'd keep it in the family. Her silence was answer enough. She left it to me, Melissa, in her will, to me. Do you know why? Because she was old and confused. Because she called me 3 months before she died. I interrupted and told me she'd overheard you on the phone with a real estate agent getting a valuation. She was in her own living room and you were in the kitchen and you didn't think she could hear you. Melissa's face crumbled. That's not, I was just exploring options. She cried, I said softly. She called me crying, asking if I knew, asking if you really thought so little of all her memories there. The house where she raised me, where your grandfather died, where she planted that rose garden with her own hands. I wouldn't have sold it right away, Melissa said weakly. Does it matter? I asked. The point is she knew, and she changed her will. She left it to me because she trusted me to honour what it meant. And I tried, I really did. I kept it for a year. I paid the taxes, the insurance, the maintenance. I thought maybe I stopped, swallowed hard. I thought maybe you'd change, come round, remember who you used to be. Travis spoke up quietly. Melissa, maybe your mum has a point. Shut up, Travis, she whirled on him. This is between me and my mother. He raised his hands and backed toward the living room, clearly regretting opening his mouth. Melissa turned back to me, and now the tears were really falling. You don't understand, she said. We need this. We need it. I've got credit card debt, the car payment. Travis lost his job last month. He what? She wiped her eyes angrily. He's between positions. It's temporary. But we've got bills, Mum. Real bills. And you just gave away $400,000 that should have been mine. I felt something inside me harden and soften at the same time. This was my child, my baby girl who I'd rocked to sleep 1,000 nights, who I'd worked 2 jobs to put through college. This was also a stranger who saw me as a bank, who saw her grandmother's life as a real estate transaction. I didn't give it away, I said. I sold it, and the money is in my account. For my care, for my future, for whatever time I have left. Your care, Melissa laughed, but there was panic in it now. You're 73 and you're healthy. You could live another 20 years. You don't need $400,000. I might, I said. I might need in-home care someday, or assisted living, or medical bills that Medicare doesn't cover. I might need a lot of things. You have Social Security. You have the pension from the school district, which barely covers my mortgage and utilities I finished. You know this, Melissa. You know exactly how much I have because you've asked me multiple times whether I'd need to sell this house to afford retirement. She had the grace to look ashamed. I was just trying to help you plan. No, I said gently. You were trying to calculate how much you'd inherit and when. The kitchen fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a dog barking outside. Travis had disappeared into the living room. I could see his shadow through the doorway, probably scrolling through his phone, pretending not to hear. Melissa's voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. What are you going to do with it? The money? I'd been asking myself the same question for days. I don't know yet, I admitted, but it's mine to decide. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I can't believe you're doing this. After everything, after all the Sundays I spent with Grandma, all the time I took care of her, you visited her for 2 hours on Sunday afternoons, I said, my voice still calm. I was there every single day. I did her laundry, managed her medications, took her to doctor appointments, held her hand when she was scared. You had coffee and cookies and talked about your life. That's not true. Melissa, I looked at her steadily. Your grandmother kept a journal. I found it when I was cleaning out her things. She wrote about every visit, everything that was said. She loved you so much, but she knew the difference between love and performance. My daughter stared at me like I'd slapped her. Then she grabbed her purse from the counter and headed for the door. Come on, Travis, we're leaving. He appeared from the living room, looking relieved to be escaping. But at the door, Melissa turned back. Her face was blotchy from crying, her mascara smudged. You're going to regret this, she said. When you're old and alone and you need someone to take care of you, you're going to wish you'd treated your family better. The words were meant to hurt, and they did, but I'd survived worse pain than this. Maybe, I said, but at least I'll know I was honest. With myself and with you. She slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I heard the car start, heard them pull away fast, tyres squealing slightly on the cold pavement. Then silence. I sat at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around my cooling tea, and felt the weight of what I'd just done settle over me like a heavy blanket. My phone buzzed, a text from Sandra. You okay? I saw them leave. I'm okay. I typed back, thank you for checking, but I wasn't sure if that was true. I'd just burned a bridge with my only child. I'd chosen dignity over peace, honesty over easy comfort. The money from the house sat in my bank account like a question mark, like a responsibility I hadn't asked for but couldn't avoid. Outside, the March wind rattled the bare branches of the maple tree in my front yard. Spring was coming, but it wasn't here yet. I was alone in my small house with its mortgage and its memories, with surgical staples still holding my skin together, with $400,000 and absolutely no idea what came next. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known sitting there in my quiet kitchen, was that Melissa wasn't finished, not even close, and the choice I'd made that day would set in motion a series of events that would test everything I thought I knew about forgiveness, about family, and about what kind of woman I wanted to be in the time I had left. 3 days passed in silence, no calls, no texts, nothing from Melissa. I told myself it was for the best, that we both needed time to cool down, but the quiet pressed in on me in ways I hadn't expected. I'd lived alone since my husband Richard left in 1987, had raised Melissa by myself, had grown comfortable with solitude. This was different. This was the silence of doors closing. On Thursday morning, I got a letter, not an email or a text, but an actual letter delivered by certified mail. I had to sign for it, which made my hands shake a little as I carried it back inside. The return address was from Henderson and Associates, attorneys at law. My daughter was suing me. I read the letter 3 times, standing in my entryway, still wearing my bathrobe. Legal terms jumped out at me: undue influence, mental incompetence, breach of fiduciary duty. Melissa was contesting my mother's will, claiming that I'd manipulated her during her final months, that she hadn't been of sound mind when she changed it, that the house rightfully belonged to Melissa as the intended beneficiary. I sat down on the stairs, the letter trembling in my hands. This was my daughter, my child, the girl I'd taught to read, whose skinned knees I'd bandaged, whose heartbreaks I'd soothed, and she was taking me to court. The phone rang. It was Robert Hendricks, my mother's estate attorney, the man who'd handled the probate. His voice was professionally neutral, but I could hear the concern underneath. Mrs. Morrison, I received notice of the lawsuit this morning. I wanted to reach out before you heard from anyone else." "Too late," I said, my voice hollow. "I just got the letter." "I'm sorry," he paused. "For what it's worth, this case has no merit. Your mother was completely lucid when she updated her will. I have documentation, medical records, witness testimony. She made her wishes very clear. Then why is Melissa doing this?" Another pause. "I can't speak to her motivations, but Mrs. Morrison, Patricia, these things can get ugly. They can drag out for months, even years. They can get expensive. Some people hope you'll settle just to make it go away." I understood what he wasn't saying. Melissa was counting on me to give her some of the money, just to avoid the fight, the embarrassment, the pain of airing our family's dirty laundry in court. "What do?" I asked. "You fight," he said simply. "If you want to, or you negotiate, it's your choice." After we hung up, I sat on those stairs for a long time. The surgical staples had been removed 2 days ago, but I could still feel where they'd been, a tightness across my belly that reminded me how fragile everything was. Body, family, the illusion that love was unconditional. I thought about calling Melissa, trying to talk to her. But what would I say? I understood, maybe for the first time, that we were past talking. This wasn't about the house or the money anymore. This was about something that had been broken between us for years, maybe decades, and I'd just been too hopeful or too blind to see it. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in months. I drove to St. Catherine's Church, the small Catholic church where I'd attended Mass irregularly since moving to this neighbourhood. Father Miguel was in his office working on Sunday's homily, and he looked up with surprise when I knocked on his open door. "Patricia," he said warmly, "come in, please." I told him everything, not for confession. I wasn't sure what I'd done wrong, if anything, but because I needed to say it out loud to someone who wouldn't judge, who wouldn't take sides. He listened without interrupting, his weathered hands folded on his desk, his kind eyes steady on mine. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What do you think you should do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to just give her half the money, make this stop. She's my daughter, but I think that would be wrong," I said slowly, working it out as I spoke. "Not wrong because she doesn't deserve it, but wrong because it wouldn't actually help her. It would just teach her that manipulation works, that she can bully her way into whatever she wants. And that's not love, that's enabling." Father Miguel nodded slowly. "You know," he said, "Jesus talked a lot about forgiveness, but he also talked about truth, about calling sin what it is, about loving people enough to let them face consequences. I don't want to be vindictive," I said. "I don't want revenge. That's not what this is," he said gently. "Revenge is about hurting someone because they hurt you. What you're describing is boundaries, justice, letting reality teach lessons you can't." I left his office feeling steadier, but no less sad. The lawsuit wound its way forward like a slow-moving storm. There were depositions, document requests, interrogatories. Robert Hendricks handled most of it, but I still had to participate, had to relive my mother's final years, had to see in black and white how Melissa characterised me: manipulative, controlling, greedy. The worst part was the things she claimed that had small kernels of truth, twisted beyond recognition. Yes, I'd encouraged Mum to think about who would really take care of her legacy. Yes, I'd been there every day while Melissa came weekly, but Melissa made it sound sinister, calculated, like I'd isolated my mother and poisoned her against her beloved granddaughter. Sandra came over one evening in May with a casserole and a bottle of wine. We sat on my back porch as the sun set, and she asked the question everyone was probably thinking: "Why don't you just give her some money and end this?" "Because it wouldn't end," I said. "It would just be the beginning of the next time she needed something, the next crisis, the next demand, and eventually there'd be nothing left anyway." "So what will you do with it?" Sandra asked. "The money?" "I'd been thinking about that. I met with a financial advisor last week," I said. We set up some things, an annuity that'll give me steady income, a long-term care insurance policy, and I paused, a charitable trust for a scholarship fund at the community college for single mothers trying to finish their degrees. Sandra looked at me with something like awe. Your mother would have loved that. I think so too, I said. The trial was set for September, but in August something shifted. Robert called me on a Tuesday afternoon and I could hear the smile in his voice. They're withdrawing the lawsuit, he said. I sat down, dizzy with relief. What? Why? Their attorney probably explained the reality. We had everything, medical documentation of your mother's competency, her journal entries, testimony from her doctors and her neighbours. Melissa's case was built on emotion and wishful thinking. If it went to trial, she wouldn't just lose, she'd be humiliated. And she'd owe legal fees she clearly can't afford. After I hung up, I cried. Not from happiness exactly, but from exhaustion, from grief, from the sheer weight of 6 months of fighting my own child. The letter came 2 days later, not from lawyers this time, but from Melissa herself, handwritten on her good stationery. Mum, I'm dropping the lawsuit. Travis and I are moving to Arizona. He got a job offer there and we need a fresh start. I know you probably think I'm running away, and maybe I am. I don't know what else to say except I'm sorry things turned out like this. I wish they were different. I wish a lot of things were different. I hope you're happy with your choices. Melissa. There was no return address, no phone number, just goodbye. I held that letter for a long time, reading between the lines. She wasn't apologising for what she'd done. She was apologising that we'd ended up here, as if it was something that had happened to us rather than something she'd chosen. But underneath the careful wording, I heard something else. Pain, shame, maybe the echo of a daughter who'd lost her way and didn't know how to find her way back. I thought about calling her, one last attempt at reconciliation, but Father Miguel's words came back to me. Love them enough to let them face consequences. Melissa needed to sit with what she'd done, needed to feel the full weight of it without me rushing in to make it easier. So I did something else instead. I wrote her a letter back, sent it to her old address with forwarding instructions. Melissa, I received your note. I want you to know that I forgive you, even though you didn't ask for forgiveness. I forgive you because carrying anger and hurt for the rest of my life would only poison me, and I won't do that. But forgiveness doesn't mean pretending this didn't happen. It doesn't mean going back to the way things were. You made choices, and choices have consequences. I made choices too to protect myself, to stand up for what's right, to honour your grandmother's wishes. I don't regret them. If you ever want to really talk, not to negotiate or demand, but to actually heal, I'm here, but I won't chase you. You're a grown woman and you have to decide what kind of person you want to be. I love you. I always have. I always will. But I also love myself, and I've learnt that sometimes those two things exist in tension. I hope Arizona is good to you. I hope you find whatever you're looking for. Mum, I never heard back. For months, I wondered if she'd even received it, if she'd read it, if it had meant anything. The silence stretched into fall, then winter, but life went on. I healed from the surgery completely. I started volunteering at the community college, helping to administer the scholarship fund I'd created in my mother's name. I met women who reminded me of myself at 30, at 40, struggling, exhausted, determined. Every time I handed out an award check, I thought about my mother, about the house she'd left me, about how love could compound across generations in unexpected ways. Sandra became a real friend, not just a kind neighbour. We started a book club with some other women from the neighbourhood. I went to Mass more regularly, found comfort in the rhythms of something older and steadier than my own small life. And the money I'd fought so hard for, sat in carefully managed accounts, growing slowly, ensuring that whatever came next, I'd face it with dignity and tact. One afternoon in December, I was wrapping Christmas presents for the scholarship recipients when my phone rang. Unknown number, I almost didn't answer. Mum? My heart stopped. Melissa? Yeah, her voice was small, uncertain. I got your letter. I've been carrying it round for months. I don't know why I'm calling. I wanted you to know. I read it. I sat down slowly, the wrapping paper crinkling in my lap. Okay, I said carefully. I'm not ready, she said quickly, to talk about everything, to hash it all out. But I thought maybe, I don't know, maybe someday. Someday is fine, I said, and I meant it. I'm not going anywhere. We talked for 5 minutes, maybe less. Small things, the weather in Phoenix, how she was liking her new job as a barista, a huge step down from pharmaceutical sales, but something she said felt more honest. She didn't mention Travis. I didn't ask. When we hung up, I sat in my living room, surrounded by half-wrapped presents, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not hope that everything would magically fix itself, not hope that we'd go back to some imaginary perfect relationship we'd never actually had, but hope that maybe with enough time and enough truth we might build something real. I looked at the Christmas tree in the corner, a small live one I bought from the church fundraiser. Next to it was a photo of my mother in her rose garden, smiling at the camera, dirt under her fingernails, completely at peace. She'd done what she thought was right, and so had I. The inheritance she'd left me wasn't really about money at all. It was about dignity, about knowing your own worth, about loving people enough to tell them the truth, even when the truth cost everything. Outside, snow was starting to fall, soft and quiet in the December dusk. I turned on the lamp, finished wrapping the presents, and made myself a cup of tea. Somewhere in Arizona, my daughter was living a life I knew almost nothing about. Somewhere in the future, we might find our way back to each other, or we might not. But here now, in this small house I'd fought to keep, with a life I'd built from scratch and rebuilt again, I was okay, more than okay, I was free. And that, I thought, was its own kind of grace.